NCR. Now it's 18%. So this is a 7-day average. Means medyo mabilis bumaba yung positivity rate. So it means that even if we have lower testing, if the positivity rate is decreasing, that's a sign that the trend is actually lowering because the density of positive cases is also decreasing.
Okta adds the reproduction rate, or the number of people that an infected person might transfer the virus to, already dropped to less than 0.9 in most cities in NCR. Reproduction rate below 1 could mean a slowdown in the transmission. Metro Manila and the rest of the country have been under various kinds of quarantine restrictions since early last year. But for Roque, wider lockdowns are not the key to curb the spread of the virus.
Ang lockdown po ay hindi solusyon. Hindi po mawawala na tuluyan ng COVID sa mga darating na panahon. Importante po, pag-ingatan natin mga buhay nang tayo po ay makapaghanap buhay.
Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Chua agrees, saying intensifying granular lockdowns and following minimum health standards are more effective. Well, the country has been battling the COVID-19 pandemic for 18 months. That's a year and a half. And until now, we're still hearing the same concerns from frontliners. They say the government's pandemic response is lacking, especially in the regions. Caroline Bonkin has that story.
Ang mga MHOs, makapagpahinga lang tayo kung nagka-COVID na tayo.
It's a fatalistic remark from a doctor describing thousands of weary health workers scarred from battling COVID-19 since March last year.
Lahat ng kausap mo pagod. Pagod na kasi 18 months and then we're still in the same level.
Many provinces are still struggling with lack of basic facilities and resources to beat the virus, making the job of health workers doubly difficult. A doctor in Cagayan Province laments the scant facilities for COVID-19 patients.
Kunwari galing ka ng Santa Ana and you have to get admitted to a COVID facility within 4 hours to travel from Santa Ana to the district hospital that will cater to COVID patients.
In the Nagat Islands, testing is only done twice or thrice a week since samples need to be transported by boat.
Ang ating pinakamalapit na testing facility ay sa Surigao City, pero yun ay 1 hour away by boat.
The nearest facility is a Philippine Red Cross laboratory and patients have to pay. This limits the acceptance of samples from patients with PhilHealth.
Otherwise, they will have to pay out of pocket na wala naman sa price range ng average na dinagat nun.
For those without health insurance, samples are sent to Butuan City, also in the Caraga region, an additional 2 to 3 hour trip. Slots are also limited because the facility here also processes samples from other provinces.
Hindi din kasi namin kayang gawin siya everyday. Mauubusan kami ng driver, tsaka mauubusan kami ng budget para sa gasolina. Madadali pa ang kanilang testing, subsequent testing ng kanilang contact.
Isolation facility for suspected COVID-19 cases in the island is still under construction. And because internet connection is limited, manual contact tracing is the next best thing. There are only 20 doctors attending to 127,000 people. The province is in touch with the health department to have a COVID-19 testing machine in the island. But health workers still face another problem, convincing residents reluctant to get tested for fear of losing income. Caroline Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
Now the latest in the Farmley controversy. A witness presented by a lawmaker during a Senate probe denies being bribed into testifying against the government supplier. The whistleblower says it was he who reached out to Senator Risa Ontiveros. He confessed to being hired as Farmley's warehouse staff and that he and other workers were asked to change the
even if they are were dented, dirty, or expired. Ontiveros answered chief legislative officer presented the witness again today to dispute the claims of Farmely's legal counsel, Ferdinand Topacio. Yesterday, Topacio showed a video supposedly of another warehouse staffer claiming that Ontiveros' witness received money in exchange for his testimony.
So yung mga anomalyan yon ay totoo, hindi ito invento, yung mga substandard na face shield at yung pagpapalit ng certificate ng face shield, ito ay totoo.
Inamin na rin naman po ni Miss Marlon, kaya po talagang ano po ako, natotoo po lahat na sinabi ko. Kusang ang loob kong sinabi po sa inyo, tapos wala naman po kung bayad na hiningi po sa inyo.
Ontiveros' team says it took them weeks to assess the information given by the witness. Asked if they're...
Ontiveros says consultations are underway, but for now they're focused on the Senate panel's hearings on alleged anomalies in the procurement of government COVID-19 supplies. The center maintains that Topacio's allegations are an attempt to divert public attention. A Farmely official skips today's Senate inquiry after dropping a bombshell in a previous hearing. In her absence, lawmakers grilled the firm's accountant as well as a former top budget official, former procurement service head Lloyd Christopher Lau. Amor Santos gives us updates from that 10th hearing. Amor?
PO Farmely official Crizel Grace Mago has not surfaced since her shocking admission last Friday that the company tampered with the expiration dates of its face shields and thus swindling the government. According to the Blue Ribbon Committee's Oversight Office Management, Mago is practically missing. Farmely's Corporate Secretary Mohit Dargani said he last spoke with Mago last Saturday morning. On Sunday, Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Richard Gordon announced that they could no longer contact Mago. He asked the Senate Sergeant at Arms to track her down, something that's also being done by the National Bureau of Investigation.
May I request the Sergeant at Arms to please trace her whereabouts so we can find her, because she's a very material witness in this particular case. She's more than just somebody who appears to be a clerk, or I think she knows a lot more, and she does a lot more for Farmely.
Counsel of another Farmely executive director, Lincoln Ong, claims his client was being forced to testify. He's under Senate custody for allegedly lying in previous hearings. Another resource person, Farmely Biologicals Rose Lynn, excused herself for medical reasons. During the hearing, Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon again quizzed accountant Iluminada Sebial about Farmely's financial records, including over 7 billion pesos in sales and 33 million pesos in donations to various government entities in 2020. Sebial said she was paid 4,000 pesos to sign the financial statement, basing it on a mere list because Farmely refused to give supporting documents. Gordon ordered the issuance of a subpoena for Farmely's chief accountant. Meanwhile, lawmakers again grilled resigned Undersecretary Lloyd Christopher Lau, then head of the Budget Department's Procurement Service, for using the suggested retail prices basis for the wholesale purchase of COVID-19 supplies. Lau had caught the ire of lawmakers during previous hearings, and it was no different this time.
Mr. Lau, are you smirking?
No,
are you smirking, Mr. Lau?
I'm smiling, Mr. Chairman.
What's funny? What's funny? Why is it funny?
Yeah, if I find it humorous, Mr. Chairman.
It is not humorous when you overprice, Mr. Lau. It is not humorous when people are dying because of substandard materials, particularly.
People are dying. That's why we procured it for them.
Yeah, you procured it substandard for them.
Gordon also reprimanded Lau for raising his voice in an interpellation by Senator Risa Ontiveros, reminding him that he has no immunity in the Senate despite the support he has been receiving from President Duterte, no less. Back to you.
Amor, let's go back to Crizel Amago. Didn't she make an official statement saying that she needed time to think, but that she was willing to cooperate with the probe?
That's right, Pia, but as far as the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee is concerned, Mago is missing because she has not made any formal communication with them, not an email, not a response to text messages or to phone calls. And Gordon also said it's difficult to verify if the official statement really came from Mago. Now, yesterday, CNN Philippines received a phone call and it was from an unknown number. The person identified herself as Crizel Grace Mago, saying she was confirming that the official statement came from her, but then she refused to answer any questions from us. Pia.
Amor Santos there reporting. Still ahead on Newsnight, an opposition coalition endorses Vice President Leni Robredo as its standard bearer for the elections. Find out what Robredo has to say. And an up-close conversation with Jinggoy Estrada, who is running for the Senate next year. He joins us live here on CNN Philippines. Stay tuned.
North Korea's aggressive young dictator is back to tweaking, agitating, clamoring for the West's attention, and getting it. North Korea's news agency claims Kim Jong-un's military has test-fired a hypersonic missile which can travel several times faster than the speed of sound and has a warhead that detaches and glides. That was just minutes before North Korea's envoy to the UN spoke to the General Assembly, accusing the U.S. of, quote, antagonizing Pyongyang, blasting the U.S.-South Korean military alliance, and making an implied threat of his own.
We have been very much accustomed to the U.S. military threat, and we know well how to deal with the U.S., the most hostile country.
After a period of relative calm, military tensions on the Korean peninsula have recently been boiling. This is North Korea's third missile test this month, following another ballistic missile test in mid-September and tests of long-range cruise missiles before that. South Korea tested a submarine-launched ballistic missile on September 16th and is deploying a 3,000-ton sub capable of firing it.
On the peninsula, it's clear there's arms racing dynamics going on. North Korea is signaling that its missile arsenal is moving to sea, so South Korea is doing the same. That means that both countries will, in a crisis, be looking in many different directions. That increases the risk of miscalculation and increases the risk that an accident could occur.
The blur of activity on the peninsula in recent weeks includes a bizarre parade through Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang, featuring a hazmat squad, a canine unit, horses, and at the stroke of midnight, an image that got North Korea watchers into a lather. Kim Jong-un in a tailored, light-colored suit, looking strikingly thinner than he had a few months ago.
I see no threat to the stability of North Korea or to his rule of North Korea, except the sort of health problems that have run in his family over the years. And he probably knows that. And that may be one of the reasons why he's doing his best to stay in fighting trim, so to speak.
Kim was even shown in propaganda footage appearing to enjoy a bright green drink with a twisty straw. The visuals, the missile tests, the bombast at the UN signal a re-emergence of Kim Jong-un on the world stage. But what's his calculation?
I think the message is that North Korea is prepared to talk, but on its terms. And those terms include a desire to talk about what they describe as South Korean and U.S. hostility. And they're not particularly interested in talking about what the United States wants to talk about, and that is, of course, denuclearization. the North Koreans have made it very clear that they're not going down that path.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. In less than 24 hours, election fever begins. Tomorrow is the first day of filing of certificates of candidacy, where Filipinos will finally find out who will vie for national and local posts next year. Melissa Lopez walks us through the process.
Filipinos get an additional 3-week opportunity to enlist and the chance to vote for the next set of leaders in the May 2022 elections. Poll commissioners unanimously decided Wednesday that voter registration will resume from October 11th until the 30th. Voters may line up at COMELEC offices or mall registration desks until Thursday, September 30th. A week-long break will give way for district offices to receive the certificates of candidacy of politicians looking to join the 2022 race. Applications for first-time voters, transfer of districts, and reactivation will be accepted Mondays to Fridays from 8 in the morning until 5 p.m. COMELEC offices will only offer Saturday processing on October 30th, the last day of registration. Spokesman James Jimenez says the relatively shorter registration hours are more than enough to accommodate those trying to beat the deadline. Filipinos abroad are also given more time to sign up to vote next year. Registration activities in foreign posts will continue until October 14th.
As with any planning, talagang may allowance talaga yan. Basically, what this means is we're gonna dip into that slack time to do this for the benefit of the people who are asking for it. No, the public clamor again is really very, very loud.
The House and Senate have passed bills that would mandate COMELEC to grant a 1-month reprieve for last-minute registrants. The Senate even stalled on the poll body's 2022 budget proposal when Chairman Sharif Abbas said last week that the Commission can only allow a 1-week extension.
Huwag naman natin hintayin uli na kung saan yung deadline, doon na naman tayo magpaparehistro. So, para at least hindi rin tayo mahirapan.
Commissioner Rowena Guanzon adds the longer time will allow more Filipinos to exercise their right to vote. Mall-based registration desks will remain an option in October, along with online reactivation for those previously registered but failed to vote in the last 2 elections. More than 63 million Filipinos can vote on May 9th. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
Filipinos continue to troop to malls on the last day of voter registration this month. At a mall in Quezon City, the number of registrants was cut off as early as 3:40 a.m. Only 300 walk-ins were accommodated, apart from senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and those who had reservations. But it is a different story at another mall in Manila, where the number of registrants dropped after people were given more time to sign up.
Wala namang pinagkaiba. Kung pipila ko ngayon, pipila ako sa ibang araw. Pipila pa din naman po ako. So, gagawin ko na po kasi marami rin po kayo hinihintay, like schoolworks and yung mga gawain ko sa bahay.
Bago po ma-extend, tinry po talaga namin habulin September 30 eh. Kaya po, tinuloy na rin namin kahit po extended. It's time na po na bumoto na ako kasi po nakakaloka po yung mga nangyayari dito ngayon, lalo na for healthcare workers.
Voter registration resumes on October 11 to 30. Opposition coalition Isang Bayan is fielding Vice President Leni Robredo as its presidential bet. Now the question is, will she even run for the highest post? Our Angelo Mario has the details.
After a long search, Isang Bayan chooses Vice President Leni Robredo as its standard bearer for 2022. Robredo, the coalition believes, is the best candidate to fight plunder and dictatorship. Isang Bayan conveners screen aspirants based on their track record, integrity, competence, and ability. But why Robredo, who's lagging behind survey results? Isang Bayan convener, retired Justice Antonio Carpio, insists historically those who are leading in surveys early eventually lost. In 2019, the opposition's Ocho Derecho suffered an embarrassing defeat when none of them won a seat in the Senate. Isang Bayan asks Robredo to accept its endorsement to lead the Filipino people in this dark period in history. But if she declines, Carpio says the coalition will meet again. But for them, Robredo turning down its offer is a remote possibility. Until now, Robredo's 2022 plans remain unclear. Among her options, run for president, seek re-election, or lead Camarines Sur as governor. Robredo says she's not losing hope to unite the opposition, but will it even happen? In a statement, Robredo thanks Isang Bayan for the nomination, but she hasn't accepted it yet. She asks her supporters to join her in praying that her decision will be the best for the country. Carpio says Vice President Leni Robredo is in Bicol now, but her office has yet to confirm it. Isang Bayan and her supporters are waiting for her decision if she'll take the fight to Malacanang. Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
Still ahead on Newsline, hopefuls for national posts will converge at a hotel in Pasay City during the week-long filing of candidacies. Get a preview of what to expect there. And Jimboy Estrada will again try his luck for a Senate seat next year after failing in the 2019 race. We'll get up close with him live.
Star's video for the latest single off his EP, Change the World, features Kids in the Spotlight, a non-profit that helps foster care youth tell their stories through film. The kids also help develop the concept for the video and assist in the directing, lighting, choreography, and other areas. Zac Brown Band's The Comeback Tour is on hold after Brown tested positive for COVID-19. Brown broke the news on social media, saying he's putting the health and safety of our fans and crew first. He thanked the fans and frontline workers and promised that the band will resume the tour as soon as it's safe.
We always do get through it, and we're going to get through it again.
Sure, this is the safest place to be.
Here's your first look at 13 minutes. That's how long people in a heartland town have to find shelter when a tornado hits their community. 13 Minutes lands in theaters October 29th, on VOD November 19th, and DVD December 7th. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, BXPO. Presence sa uso sa dawan sa inyong radyo. RPM BXPO, ang radyo ronda dini sa lapangan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sigahan na magalaw sa katawan ang mga servisyo sa kanan. Ang RPM BXPO radyo ronda sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas. RPM, Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, BXPO.
COVID-19 cases are rising again, and we are seeing the highest number of infections since the pandemic began. And now that more of us are getting vaccinated, we want to talk about how they work. How can we be protected against the new variant? When are booster shots needed? And why we should not let our guards down? I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Since the first outbreak of the coronavirus in 2019, experts were working tirelessly to come up with vaccines to combat it. And each of them went through rigorous testing to ensure their quality, safety, and efficacy. Today, there are 9 COVID-19 vaccines approved for use in the country. Let's welcome our guests for today. With us is Dr. Mark Edsel Ayes. He's the Clinical Genomics Laboratory Head at the Philippine Genome Center. We're also joined by Dr. Adrian Buensalido. He's the chairman of the Infection Prevention and Control Committee of the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. I'll start first with Dr. Adrian. We often hear of efficacy numbers, but what do they actually mean?
Efficacy just means how good a vaccine is at preventing disease. For example, in COVID, all our vaccines are very good or efficacious, at preventing severe and critical disease.
So I'd like to ask Dr. Ed, in general, the higher the efficacy rate, the better a vaccine is. But is that still true? Does that still hold true with all the variants that are here today?
Efficacy, as Dr. Buensalido mentioned, that's what you see in the clinical trials. And clinical trials are designed in such a way that you eliminate biases or yung mga tinatawag na observations that can actually cloud your judgment, yung can make the conclusion a bit wrong. So in clinical trials, you have very selected populations. And when you say 95% efficacious, that just means that in that population you observe, you were able to lower the incidence of the disease that you're trying to prevent by as much as 95%.
What is basically the difference between efficacy rates and effectiveness of a vaccine?
Efficacy is what we do in the trials. So that's sort of like the kumbaga before your pre-test, no, bago na lahat. Kasi syempre, gusto mo, bago mo isubok yung dapat tested na. Effectiveness is now what's going on, no, in real life, yung practical application basically. So that will be, usually it's a bit lower than the efficacy as seen in clinical trials. The World Health Organization recommends at least an efficacy of 50% before it can be deployed in populations. And for this reason, all of the current vaccines, they're well above the 50% recommended. And as far as the current data shows, they're performing very well naman at preventing severe disease.
Let's talk about how these numbers are affected by the more aggressive Delta variant. Why are we having this sort of situation right now in our country when a lot of people are getting vaccinated and such, but we're still seeing high numbers of infectiveness, hospitalization, and everything? Why is that happening?
Now you might wonder, we're getting vaccinated. Unfortunately, this outbreak is occurring at the same time that we are trying to vaccinate our populations. So, it's very tempting to make that conclusion na we're vaccinating pero ang dami pa rin nahahawa. But you have to put it into context. When the Delta variant started entering and there were many cases being detected, we had only just breached 10% of our population that had been fully vaccinated. So to blame the infections on vaccines that are not working is actually missing the point. We have still to vaccinate a large number of people in order for it to see the effects of it protecting the people.
Dr. Adrian, paliwanag natin ito na mabuti. Bakit hindi effective kapag isang dose lang at dapat kumpletuhin?
Ang bakuna kasi, it really just it trains our immune system. It allows our soldiers, no, to recognize the virus before the body even is encountering the virus, no? So that when it finally encounters, hopefully not, no, but finally when it encounters the virus, no, in real life, the soldiers will be able to recognize the virus and attack it early on, and hopefully prevent a disease from happening or from occurring.
So why is the second dose administered almost at sometimes a month, sometimes even longer after the first one is given? What can you say to those people? How can we encourage them to complete those doses?
We just have to tell people that one dose is not enough. No? We have to understand that the design of these vaccines is you get the maximum protection from it if you get the 2 doses.
Dr. How about the side effects? How about a lot of people are worried they don't want to get the vaccine because of the side effects?
All of the vaccines are actually pretty safe, no? And if there's one number, let's really all of them are less than 1% in terms of having serious serious adverse effects, no? Of course, we have to differentiate yung adverse effects from reactogenicity symptoms. We mentioned training. When the soldiers in our body, our immune system starts training, diba? Many times, we might feel them starting to train, no? Siyempre, gumagalaw yan. Mga sundalo, pag nagsisimula mag-training, gumagalaw. And therefore, there are reactogenicity symptoms which are expected symptoms. Yung mga talagang alam natin na talagang pwede talagang mangyari, pero hindi masama, no? And what are these? Fever, pain, no? Weakness, no? So sometimes a little bit of chills, no? So body aches, no? These are just symptoms that are telling us, our immune system, it's now working, it's now training for the battle later on.
No COVID-19 vaccine offers perfect protection, but they're effective in preventing severe COVID and even death. When we return, we'll talk more about how antibodies work. Stay with us here on MedTalk Health Talk. You're watching CNN Philippines. The COVID-19 vaccines are a safe and effective way to protect against the virus. They work by allowing our immune system to produce antibodies to fight future infections. And while they each use different technologies to do this, they aim to achieve the same goal, which is basically to end the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. We're your partner in healthcare. Is antibodies the be-all and end-all when it comes to fighting COVID-19? Or are there other factors in someone's immune system that can contribute to the fight?
A lot of people are hearing about antibodies, no? And they tend to, and you might have seen studies where they say, oh, the antibodies have gone down in this vaccine, it's not as effective. No, not necessarily. Your immune system is smart in that it also has a lot of other factors, a lot of other players. Antibodies, I like to call them like your missiles or your drones, because they can do things from afar. No, they don't. They're created by what's called your plasma cells, and then they'll fire it, and then if it finds the enemy, it will literally search and destroy. That's the idea of how antibodies work. But there are other methods, and even if you like your military analogies, hindi lang nananalo yung giyera sa mga drone lang. So you also have ground troops, and we call these T cells, no? There are many different types of T cells, but some of them are designed to be able to know the enemy, which is also something that your immune system can do thanks to the vaccines.
What would a practical way to advise our viewers when it comes to trusting the vaccine was effective when they were given to them?
I would say you would know a vaccine is effective if one, you don't get sick. And number two, if you do get sick, that it's not that severe. You don't end up having to go to the hospital. These vaccines are very sophisticated. They're manufactured in very stringent setups that it's not hindi yan basta-basta. So they have to pass through a lot of safety net, and that's the reason why it takes quite a while to have them approved. No. But as far as all of the vaccines that have been approved for use for emergency use authorization, they have met all of these requirements. So I would say that people would really have to trust in our health agencies and also the WHO and the CDC for their guidance with regard to the safety and efficacy of these vaccines.
If you are fully vaccinated and you do get COVID-19, your symptoms would be shortened, or you may not even feel symptoms at all. That's why a lot of people now think that those who are fully vaccinated and get infected, are they still as contagious? Are they still as infectious as someone who has not been vaccinated? Dr. Adrian, can you answer that one?
If you get vaccinated, don't think that you're already invulnerable, that you won't be hit by COVID already. At this time, especially with the Delta variant that is more infectious than the original virus, we still need to maintain our masks, our face shields, our hand hygiene, everything. So we can still get coronavirus, and therefore when we get symptoms, we can't say that this is not COVID. Vacunado na ako eh. We should still suspect and check, and because if we don't, we might transmit. If in fact we got COVID, we can still transmit it to our family members, our office mates.
If someone is fully vaccinated, do we already know the length of time that these antibodies for COVID-19 are effective or remain in the body? What I'm trying to drive at is the need for boosters, which a lot of people are talking about. Could you answer this one, Dr. Adrian?
You have to remember that the vaccines have been there for around 1.5 years, or around a year. So this is the data that we have, that the vaccines, we've known them, and we are continuing to collect data for around a year or so. Now, there are studies that have shown that the antibody levels have indeed been going down in some vaccines for around 6 months, 4 months in some. But like was mentioned earlier, it doesn't mean that your antibody levels, just because they are going down, means that the vaccine is totally losing its efficacy. In fact, the studies that have been coming out show that despite the Delta variant, despite the slight waning, pagbagsak ng konti ng antibody levels, magaling pa rin yung mga vaccine from preventing severe and critical illness.
My question is herd immunity still relevant? Is still relevant today? Is that still something that we are looking to achieve? And if it still is, initially it was 70%, is that still the number we need to achieve until now, Dr. Ed?
In the context of protecting those people who cannot get the vaccine right now. So we're talking about younger populations where the studies that are looking about the safety profile and the dosage needed is still ongoing. And also those people who have reduced immunity, either because they have a condition that they cannot receive vaccines because their body can't produce antibodies. So or cancer patients. So there are populations that will need herd immunity in order to be protected. And that's why it's still relevant.
The Delta variant is the most contagious and transmissible variant to date, but there are other new variants such as the Mu variant, which is just around the corner. So, can additional boosters help protect us from these new variants? We'll tell you more after a short break. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health, so stay with us on CNN Philippines. Today, the Delta variant is the dominant strain in the Philippines, and it is also now affecting many parts of the world. But as with many viruses, we still need to keep our guards up because we keep seeing new variants come into play. So how about boosters for these new ones? I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, where your health comes first. Is the vaccine that was given to us designed around the original variant of COVID-19? Are those still going to be effective with new variants down the road?
Right now, we're seeing that with the Delta variant, the original, of course, the vaccines that we have now were designed to prevent the original SARS-CoV-2. We're seeing that they're still very good at preventing severe and critical disease. However, we have to go back to the original. The original SARS-CoV-2 is like a robber, parang magnanakaw. So it just wants to rob houses. The original SARS-CoV was actually very good at robbing 3 houses. So usually one person usually infects 3 people. But because of the Delta, kumbaga parang naging mas magaling yung magnanakaw. Instead of 3, it can now rob 6 houses. So as time goes on, ganun ang viruses and but some viruses are changed faster than others. Fortunately, sa SARS-CoV, hindi masyado, not as fast as others, pero not as slow as others din.
We're seeing now the Delta variant, which is a variant of concern. And now there's this new variant, which was initially seen last January, which was a virus of interest. Is this another Delta just waiting to happen or something even worse?
As with any variant, this is a result of mutation. And, the reason why you call it a variant of interest is because the mutations in its genome occur in areas that have clinical consequences. Like, for example, in the Delta variant, the reason why it is a variant of concern is because it has a mutation in one of its areas, which makes it very good at entering the cells. And you also have, for example, I'm not sure if people remember, but the Beta variant, we used to call that the South African variant. That one has a mutation in its spike protein, which is that's the protein that connects to our cells, in order to infect. And it's also the portion that our antibodies attached to. So because it mutated in that area, the antibodies might not latch as well. Yun ang sinasabi ni Dr. Ben Salido na nag-iba yung itsura. So it's like your soldiers, sinabi, yung tao may bigote. And then nawala yung bigote ng tao. So isipin, siya pa rin ba? Things like that, right?
Would boosters be a good argument for this, or the need to take a booster shot? A good argument for this?
The basis of whether or not you consider a booster is more on the signal. When you look at the effectiveness, and that's why we follow up the populations who have been vaccinated to see whether or not there seems to be a decrease in the effectiveness. For example, some people have brought it to my attention because they're wondering, like the CDC is already recommending booster shots in certain populations. And this is what we mean, because they're seeing the signals that the effectiveness of the vaccine is starting to decrease in those particular populations. So we're talking about people who have immune deficiency issues or taking medications that can interfere. So dun pa lang, they're seeing that the signal is dropping. But as far as the regular me and you, the normal population is concerned, it looks like the vaccines are still effective. So until they see those early signs, those early signals that the effectiveness is starting to wane, tsaka na lang natin pag-iisipan na baka we need a booster. But for now, it appears to be it's still working.
When we say booster, are we referring to the same brand of vaccine that was initially taken, or are we talking about a different brand, changing to a different type of vaccine as a booster?
Traditionally, of course, it would be the same one, but understandably, because of the logistics involved and the worldwide demand, mixing became a question that was raised. Right now, there are safety studies that show that there does not seem to be harm mixing, meaning you're not expecting any adverse events or anything bad happening. But the efficacy of mixing is the one that's still being looked into.
We hope we're able to answer your many questions about COVID-19 vaccines. We'd like to thank our guest, Clinical Genomics Lab Head, Dr. Mark Edsel Ayes, and Infectious Disease Specialist, Dr. Adrian Buensalido. Maraming salamat, sa inyong expertise at tulong. Get vaccinated, don't hesitate, don't be afraid. The COVID-19 vaccines are safe and they have been thoroughly tested. And these vaccines will save lives. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and we'll see you again next time. Stay safe, everyone.